Hello, I'm Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for coming back to join me today. Today we are working on another of our mixed media moods. I will pop a little link up in the corner to the one that I did last time, which is about 4 or 5 weeks ago now, I believe. And this is the mood board that I've decided to work from today. Like before, I will pop a link in the description below to a blog post where I will put this mood board, and if you want to download and print it out yourself, you can do. If you don't want to do that and just want to take a screenshot, you're welcome to do that. But the theme, as you can see here, that I've chosen for this mood board is Frosty Blues, and I found a selection of images that I liked that sort of worked on that theme. So quickly running through what we have here, there's this lovely building here that painted blue, some little cupcakes with swirl of icing and some sort of what looks like edible glitter and little miniature snowballs on there. This picture here with a close-up of some snowflakes. This lovely image of an eye with the beautiful eye makeup and some little gems, and there's lots of texture in there which I'm hoping to be able to pick up on. And this lovely winter bouquet of foliage and flowers. So these are the images that I'm going to be taking some inspiration from today. As you can see on my desk here, I have already gathered together a selection of things that I'm going to be working with. I might not use all of them, but I always like to sort of have a little think as to what this inspires me to use and get some products together that I think that I can use. And that way I'm not having to get up and go and look for something else. As I did last time, I'm going to be working on an MDF circle. I'm not sure whether this is something that I'm going to do every single time we do one of these mixed media moods, but I very much enjoyed working on that last time. And this is just an MDF circle. It's about 8 inches in diameter, and all I've done to prepare it today is I've just given it a coat of white gesso. And I've just done that and let it dry. You don't need to watch me do that, but it'll just seal the MDF a little bit better because we're going to be painting directly onto the surface. So what else have I got today to sort of work with? Well, obviously this is the colour scheme that we're going with. So I have some paints here. I have like a deep blue and a medium blue and a white. These are, I believe they're actually all the Americana paints. So we have True Blue, we've got Knockout Blue, which is one of the Neon Lights range, and I've got white, Snow White, Titanium White. And I'm going to use those in the background. I've also got some modelling paste. This is a clear transparent one. I do have some white, but I thought I haven't used this. I've had a look in there and it doesn't look like I've actually used any of it. So I'm going to use some of this clear transparent modelling paste. And I'm going to be using that through this stencil. And I was inspired to pick up this stencil because of the cupcakes, so that little swirl of icing on the top. And I thought it might be nice to put some texture through the stencil. Now, rather than just leaving the modelling paste as it is, I was thinking about popping some embossing powder on the top of it and then heating it. Why not? Why not? So let's try. So I've got this chunky white embossing enamel here. This is a Stampendous one from their Frantage collection. Had this a long time, hardly used any of it. Thought that might be nice for making a bit of texture and a snowy effect. And then this is a new one by Wow. This is one of the Seth Apter ones. It's part of a trio and it's called Blue Moon. And that's sort of got blue and clear particles in there. A sort of range of colours and quite nice, not too sparkly. I didn't want those. I've got some glittery ones as well, but I didn't want to use those. I've also picked up a Lindy's spray. This is Time Travel Teal. I'm not sure whether I'm going to use it. I don't think the colour's quite right. It's a little bit too turquoise for me, but I've put it here just in case I decide maybe just to splatter a few little shimmery dots on there. I've also got a palette knife there for applying the modelling paste through the stencil. Also, I've had this for a long time. This was part of a Christmas range, and this is some bark. Actually, it is a craft product, but it is like a natural bark and it's painted white. And I thought I might be able to incorporate that in there because it has this sort of snowy feel, and I do like the texture. I've also got these stickers, these metallic stickers, Holiday Talk stickers, and I might use 1 or 2 of those as I like to pop a couple of words on things that I'm making. I've got a set of stamps here with some snowflakes. I might stamp those, so a couple of blue inks and an acrylic block. And then I have my box of little embellishments and things here. So we'll start in the middle. Because I love this little image of a house here, I've got these tiny little laser cut houses. I think these were by Wow Studio. So I'm going to try and incorporate a couple of those. I've also got this piece of MDF. It's supposed to be like a piece of driftwood. Might use that, I'm not entirely sure. I thought about maybe mounting the houses on there because they're very small. I've also got this laser cut sort of filigree snowflake design. Again, I'm not sure whether I'm going to use it, so I've just popped it in the box anyway. I have a selection of paper flowers here in different shades of blues and whites, because obviously we've got this nice bouquet. And I've also got some moss here in green and white, just because, you know, there's this foliage in here and I thought it might be nice again to add a little texture. I have this little pendant here, which is like a silver snowflake, and it has this little shimmery gem that fits in the middle. So I might be using that. And I've got a selection of sort of texture products for mixed media. So these are like a coloured sand. I've got a blue and a white. These are just some little clear dewdrop gems. I have this here, which is like a translucent white, like little crystal chips. And then I've got the pearl art balls in a white and a blue. All of those products there, and the paper flowers. And I believe the moss and the little metal snowflake are all from Artful Days. So I'll pop the web address there on the screen for you. They're in the UK. But again, feel free, as I always say, feel free to use what you've got. These are all things that I've got, many of which I've had for a long, long time. And it's all about using up these bits and pieces, you know, that are otherwise, they're just sitting there. So I find it really nice to come up with a mood board and then be able to gather together all these different things and use them to make one cohesive piece. So I've pretty much covered some inspiration from each of those images. So I'm going to move this out of the way so it's not on the screen, create a little bit of space for myself. And I'll bring back in my MDF circle. And what we're going to begin by doing is painting a nice sort of gradient on the background. I really love this image here with the eye, and I love how it fades from the deep blue through a turquoise and into a white. And I want to create something similar using acrylic paint on this base here. So for this, I'm going to take my 3 colours of paint. I'm going to pop a bit in the palette, and I'm going to use a brush and just cover the surface to create a lovely soft gradient. And there, I'm going to leave it like that. I like the fact that there is a little bit of a streak in there. I didn't want it to be completely flawless. And it's nice just to have that little bit of texture showing, but I like that. I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to give that a quick blast with the heat tool just to dry it. and then I'll be ready to move on to the next stage. Now that that's dry, I've decided I'm going to stamp some of these snowflakes onto the background. It's going to be easier to do that now before we add any texture on there. We've got a nice smooth surface and you'll get a much crisper impression. And I'm just going to be using some of these, just the smaller snowflake designs. And for this I'm using archival ink. I like using archival ink over acrylic paint. It's a permanent ink and it seems to hold its colour a bit better. Some inks can sort of seep into the acrylic paint and start to disappear. So starting with the darker blue and using that sort of towards the lower half of our piece of wood. I'm just going to clean off in between. And then use our lighter blue. The first one was manganese blue, this one is sky blue. And just using this paler blue further up. Now just going to switch to a different snowflake. So I'm quite happy with that, how that's just sort of enhanced that gradient a little bit. Now, just need to make sure that's dry before we move on to the next stage. So again, just going to give it a quick blast with the heat tool. Now that the background's completely dry, I want to use the stencil and the texture paste with some embossing powder. I'm going to do this first before I start applying any embellishments, just because this is another background element really, and as we covered in the last mixed media moods, start with the flatter background layers and gradually build your way up to the more bulky items. So I need to kind of decide on the layout design that I want really, and I do want to say I want to use a piece of this bark, and I think I'm going to be having this running somewhere like this across just below the centre line, and some bulkier embellishments around this bottom area. So I'm thinking that I want this spiral effect to maybe be around about here. And then I've got embellishments coming here and I'll see this spiral almost coming off the end of this piece of bark. So I'm going to take the clear modelling paste and I'm going to take the palette knife and apply some through the stencil. And so this looks white, but it dries clear. Although I am going to be using some embossing powder over the top, so it won't particularly look clear. I'm almost using this as a glue for my embossing powder. And I don't particularly want this to be perfect. I don't want it to go out all the way to the edge of the stencil because I don't want that hard edge. But I think that'll do. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to remove my stencil and just go and rinse this off and rinse the palette knife off. And what I want to do is sprinkle some of this embossing powder onto the wet texture paste, and I'm then going to use my heat gun to heat emboss it. And this will probably make the texture paste bubble up a little bit. Really, you should be leaving these to dry naturally if you want to just use them on their own, but I don't mind. It's going to add to the texture and sort of the effect that I'm going for. So to begin with, I'm going to sprinkle a few of these bits of the chunky white in, because I kind of want some of that stuck to the texture paste, but not too much. So just sprinkling that on there, and I'm just going to tap away the excess. And then I'm going to use some of this Blue Moon, which, as you can see, it's a mixture of sort of a blue and a clear, various colours of blue, different size crystals, quite a nice, interesting mix. So I'm just going to sprinkle that a little bit more generously this time, because I want this to be covering the texture paste. So I'll just pop the excess back into the pot. I'm just going to take a paintbrush just to flick away. There's like some fine glitter in there as well, and that's just clinging a little bit to the paint. A bit of static there, I think, just causing that to cling. So I'm just going to dust that off. And I'm going to take my heat tool and heat emboss it. And there, as you can see, the embossing powder is melted. We've got some really nice texture and some colour and a little bit of subtle shimmer in there as well. I'm very happy with that effect. I like that. It stayed quite nice and dimensional as well. So that's pretty much my background done. So we're going to start popping our embellishments on. And as I said, I want this piece of bark to go around about here. I may trim this little bit off here that just overhangs. I'm not entirely sure yet. Might leave it on there. But we're going to go for some of the more bulky items first. So I want to use some flowers, and I have all these lovely paper flowers. I've got varying sizes, and this moss, I want to use that as well. I think some of this moss will look lovely along that piece of bark. So we've got some large flowers, some medium-sized flowers, and then I've got some smaller flowers and some really little tiny paper rosebuds as well. So just going to decide whereabouts to put these. Again, I'm hoping to keep the darker colours towards the bottom, keeping with that nice gradient that we've created. So for now, just going to be popping these in place just so I can see what I think they're going to look like before I make any firm decisions and get the glue gun out. I'm wondering whether I can actually cut this down. It's a little bit wide, but I do like the shape of it. So I'm just going to see if I can score and break that with my knife, and then I'll be right back. Yep, so I've just scored and managed to cut through so that I've got a narrower piece. I still want to put some of these little houses on it, but it was just too wide before. So I'm thinking that that's probably going to go in there. And I do want to paint that and paint the little houses before they go on, but just popping it there for now, just for position, so I can gauge where things are going to go. So I'm going to continue just positioning these various flowers until I'm happy with where they are, and then I'll take my glue gun and glue them in place, and then I'll be back and we'll move on to the next stage. So I've glued my flowers and my moss in place, and my nice piece of bark here. I've also glued that snowflake embellishment in there. I've used my hot glue gun for all of that. And I've taken, I've just slide that up, got that little piece of MDF that I trimmed down. I've painted that white, and I've chosen 4 of the little MDF houses and painted those blue. So I want to put the houses onto this this little strip, but first of all I'm going to glue the strip in place. So I'm just going to use my hot glue gun for that, because I'm going onto the bark and it's quite an uneven surface. I'm just going to press that down there. And I'm going to glue these little MDF houses. I'm just going to use some like PVA glue. This is just the Gina K Connect glue. I don't need a big blob of glue gun glue, because these are quite smooth surfaces. So we're just going to place them onto there in a little row. Just make sure that they're reasonably straight. So yep, happy with those. So I want to put, obviously I've got the little word stickers, but before I do that I want to put some of these texture products on. And again, I'm going to start with the larger ones first. So that's these little pearl art balls. They come in various sizes in the pack. I just thought it was nice. I'd got some blue ones, I've got some white ones, and I've also got these clear little dewdrops, and I'm going to pop these in place. Again, I think I'm just going to use this glue. You could use a little gel medium, that would do it. Don't need to use the hot glue gun, but definitely something like a heavy gel medium would do, or just a little all-purpose glue. I quite like this. It's fairly precise with the nozzle, so I can decide where I want to pop them. Pop a little blob of glue, and this glue will dry clear once it's dried, so if there's any sticking out you won't see it. So I'm just going to pop some of these in and around the embellishments that we've got already. So I'll probably just speed this process up, and then I'll come back to you ready to use the finer texture elements afterwards. So that's the larger of those textural elements in, the little balls and the clear dewdrops. And finally, really, for this, I want to use some of these. So we've got these translucent the deco sprinkles. So they're like little white chips, almost like little stone chips. And I have these decorative sands. Not sure whether I'm going to use the blue. Might mix a bit of blue and white together. But I'm going to apply these with a bit of heavy gel medium. So what I'm going to do is just pop some heavy gel medium on my piece of paper there. And I'm going to take a paintbrush and pop some of the gel medium where I want these sprinkles and things to go. And then I can just sprinkle some on and tap off the excess once it's dry. And finally, I'm going to use one of these stickers. I want something that isn't particularly Christmassy though. So I think I'm going to have "Remember This." I'm just going to, even though these are self-adhesive, I'm just going to pop a bit of the gel medium on the back. Always think when you're sticking these down onto something that's not a piece of card, it's better to use a proper adhesive as well. And I'm just thinking, is there something small? Quite like the word what have we got? I think I'll use joy. We have joy there, so let's use that. And again, a little bit of gel medium. And we'll tuck that in there. So I'm going to clean up, clean my brush off, move these little bits out of the way, let this glue just dry so that it goes transparent, and be back to show you the final thing. And here we are with our finished mixed media mood project. I'm really happy with this. It's got so much texture in there. Really, really happy with that. Love the embossing that I did over that texture paste. And I really think that we did capture the essence of this mood board. Obviously, we've got this image here with the little blue house, and that's reflected there in those MDF houses. The cupcake with the swirl and the sprinkles. Well, we've got our swirl design here in the background, and we've even got some texture in these little pearl balls that look very much like the embellishments that are on those cakes. Obviously, we've got the snowflake. We have this beautiful snowflake here, and the snowflakes that we stamped in the background. I know we covered a lot of these at the bottom, but it was nice to put them in there first, so I'm happy that we see a few of those poking out. Obviously the floral bouquet, we have the paper flowers, we have the moss, we've got the natural bark element in there as well. Very happy with that. And then this image with the eye is the colour choices I've used, and that lovely nice gradient with the acrylic paint. And again, there's some little gems and texture in there. And if we take a closer look, we've got this lovely texture, the difference between these little chips and then the coloured sand, the little dewdrops. Very happy with that indeed. So this is going to go on a little easel that I've got. Somebody did ask me how do I go about hanging them? Would I drill a hole and hang them? Yes, indeed, you could put a couple of holes in there and put some thread through. You could put a picture hanger on the back of it, or make a hanger out of some wire and glue gun that onto the back of it. But I tend to stand these on little easels and display them on a shelf. But I really, really like this. So I shall add this to a playlist with the one that I did previously, and as I say, there will be a few more throughout the course of the year. But once again, hope you enjoyed this. Hope it's taken some of the mystery out of mixed media for you and shown you how you can put together some of the products that you might just have lying around and create something really nice. Don't forget to check out the link. I will leave a link where you can go and download and print that off if you want to work from this mood board yourself. But as always, leave a thumbs up if you did enjoy this. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And please feel free to leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But for now, that's all. Bye.